Good morning, good morning, good morning, and welcome to Mind Over Media. I'm your host, David J., and over the next 6 episodes, all right, we're going to take a journey that I hope will fundamentally change how you see the world around you. So this is episode 1, the origins of propaganda. Okay, we're going to go back to where it all began, its evolution from the early 20th century psychological experiments into the sophisticated digital manipulation machine that shapes your social media feed, your political beliefs, and yes, even what you had for breakfast this morning. All right. So I'm going to help you understand, number one, who invented propaganda, why, and how their techniques still control us today, especially politically. Just ask the orange felon. All right. So I want to introduce you to a man whose name you probably don't know, but whose fingerprints are all over your life. And he's called the father of public relations and modern propaganda. He goes by the name of Edward Bernays. Right? So Bernays was born in Vienna in 1891 and came to the United States as an infant. But here is where the story gets kind of fascinating. All right? So Bernays was the nephew, the double nephew of Sigmund Freud. So his mother was Freud's sister and his father was the brother of Freud's wife. Now, this connection would shape everything that Bernays became. And while Freud was developing psychoanalysis to understand the human mind, Bernays was figuring out how to exploit it for profit and political power. You see, Freud wanted to heal the unconscious. Bernays, conversely, he wanted to manipulate it. Bernays lived to be 103 years old. He didn't die until 1995, which means that the man who invented modern propaganda lived long enough to see the internet, CNN, and the beginning of the digital age. Now, think about that for a moment. This man created modern propaganda, okay, in the earlier 20th century, and he lived long enough to see it turn into what it is. Now, let me show you Freudian's influence. Right? So, in order to understand Bernays, you have to understand what he learned from his uncle Freud. And the key lesson was that people are not rational. Yeah. You see, Freud's psychoanalytic theory revealed that humans are driven by unconscious desires, fears, and impulses that we don't recognize. In fact, what I'm going to do is I'm going to let bruh man tell you all about it.
Freud and them said that, the white philosopher, when he said the dreams are like repressed desires are the things that we wish we could have.
All right, so, and that was pretty much what Freud's psychoanalytic theory was all about, that right there. But see, Bernays used good for evil. So here's the thing. We think we make logical decisions, but really, we're controlled by hidden psychological forces. You see, Bernays took this insight and he asked a very dangerous question. He asked, if people are irrational, right, driven by unconscious desires, what happens if I deliberately tap into those desires to make them do what I want? Yeah, follow me here. So Bernays helped introduce Freud's ideas to America, assisting in the publication and the promotion of psychoanalytic theory. But here's the thing, but again, while Freud wanted to make the unconscious conscious to free the people, Bernays didn't want that. He wanted to keep the unconscious, right, to control the people. So here's how Bernays put it himself, and listen carefully to these words, okay? Because this was in his book, his 1928 book called Propaganda. And I quote, okay, this is Bernays. He said that the conscious and intelligent manipulation of the organized habits and opinions of the masses is an important element in democratic society. Those who manipulate this unseen mechanism of society constitute an invisible government, which is the true ruling power of this country, end quote. Pause for a second. Look at what's going on around you, right? Read that again in your mind. So what Bernays is saying that democracy requires manipulation. What is Trump doing right now? Listen, you need to follow the episodes 2 through 6, because I'm going to show you how Trump is using Bernays' blueprint to the T, right? That there is an invisible government. This is what Bernays is saying, that there is an invisible government where people you'll never see or elect are the true rulers. So the true rulers are those in charge of this invisible government, which is steeped in propaganda. Now, here's the thing. Bernays was not warning us about this. He was bragging about being a part of it. He was snitching on himself and snitching pretty much on the political agenda with regards to manipulating constituents, right? So, but why propaganda, right? Why the philosophy behind the manipulation, right? So why did Bernays believe that this was even necessary? Why did he think democracy needed an invisible government? Well, his reasoning went like this. He said that the masses are too chaotic, too emotional, and too irrational to govern themselves effectively, right? And said that democracy could descend into mob rule without guidance. Therefore, enlightened elites needed to engineer consent, right, to guide public opinion for the greater good. So in other words, they want to tell you how to think. And that's what propaganda does, right? He also believed that in a complex modern society, you couldn't rely on people to make informed decisions. Instead, you needed experts, people like Bernays, right? Political leaders to manufacture consensus and steer society in the right direction. This, again, is coming from Bernays, right? Bernays also went on to write, and I quote, he said, "We are governed, our minds are molded, our taste formed, our ideas suggested largely by men we have never heard of. It is they who pull the wires which control the public mind," end quote. Now, here's the uncomfortable truth, right? Bernays was right about one thing. People are influenced by psychological manipulation. But here's where he's completely wrong, dangerously wrong, and catastrophically wrong, is in believing that this manipulation should be embraced rather than resisted. So in other words, we should embrace manipulation? So we should want to be manipulated? No. See, because once you accept that democracy requires manipulation, you've destroyed democracy itself, right? You've placed government by the people with government by the manipulators, right? So the fourth segment of what this means is an understanding how Bernays engineered consent, right? So how did he actually manipulate the people, right? Let me break it down to you. His core techniques, right? Number one technique, and I'm going to say this too, I'm going to elaborate and I'm going to show you in episode 2 exactly how Trump uses these techniques right now. So the first technique is appeal to emotion, not reason. You see, Bernays understood that facts don't move people. Feelings do. So he designed campaigns that bypass rational thought and emotional, went straight to the emotional brain, let's say, okay? And then technique number 2, third-party validation. Today, we call those influencers. So instead of having a company directly advertise a product, Bernays would get independent doctors, scientists, or celebrities to endorse it. So this made propaganda look like objective truth, because that's the whole point in propaganda. In order for it to work, it needs to look like truth. You need to buy into it. And technique number 3, create artificial events, right? So Bernays didn't just respond to news. He created it, much like Trump. He staged events that generated media coverage and shaped public perception. Again, episode 2, I'm going to flush all of this out and show you exactly what Trump is doing. And then technique number 4 was link products to identity and values. So Bernays sold more than products. He sold identities. He understood that people buy things not for what they do, but for what they mean. So technique number 5, right? Manufacture social proof. This is a classic of Trump's, and I'm telling you, episode 2, I'm going to go deep into it, right? So you want to make it seem like everyone is doing something, right? And people will follow. So in other words, create the appearance of a consensus, and then the real consensus will follow you. right? So these techniques, I know they sound familiar because they are. Every advertisement, every political campaign, every social media influence operation uses these exact same methods today. And then segment 5, right? The campaign that changed America. So I'm going to show you what Bernays created in terms of his campaigns and how they affected America even right now. All right, so let's look at his most famous campaigns, because these aren't just history; they are case studies in how manipulation shapes society. So the very first campaign was called Torches of Freedom. All right, so with Torches of Freedom, he was pretty much getting women to smoke in public, because in the 1920s, it was socially taboo for women to smoke in public, right? So the American Tobacco Company was losing half the potential market, and so they hired Bernays to fix it. So Bernays didn't run an ad saying women should smoke. That was too easy, too obvious. Instead, he staged a he staged a publicity stunt at the 1929 Easter Parade in New York City. What he did was he hired young women to march in the parade, and at a coordinate signal, they were to light up cigarettes as torches of freedom. So it wasn't about, so he used, you understand how he used their minds to get them to do something that they really could have done on their own, right? But see, he framed smoking as a feminist act, a blow against patriarchal restrictions, and he got media coverage calling cigarettes symbols of women's liberation. No longer did women have to worry about taboos and smoking in public, because they are now liberated because they lit that torch of freedom, which was that cigarette. And the results? Smoking among women skyrocket. Bernays had linked a deadly product to the most powerful social movement of that era. Thousands of women would actually die from lung cancer and heart disease because of this campaign. But here's the thing. Bernays had proven something, it was real. You can make people harm themselves if you make it feel like empowerment. Yeah. Right. It's too easy to make sense, right? And then campaign number 2, bacon and eggs. This was an engineered American breakfast. So here's the question. Why do Americans eat bacon and eggs for breakfast? Why is that the staple? Is it tradition? Is it culture? Nope. It's propaganda. See, before the 1920s, most Americans ate light breakfasts like coffee, toast, maybe some fruit. But Bernays was hired by the Beech Nut Packing Company to sell more bacon. So he didn't just advertise bacon. No, that was too easy for Bernays. So he surveyed thousands of doctors asking whether, now listen to this question. He asked whether a hearty breakfast was healthier than a light one. Think about it. Asking doctors, is a hearty breakfast healthier than a light one? And predictably, yes. Many of the doctors said yes. Then he got newspapers across the country to publish stories about the doctor's recommended hearty breakfast, featuring bacon and eggs. Lo and behold, here we are. Because this wasn't news. It was manufactured expert consensus, and it worked. Within years, bacon and eggs became the traditional American breakfast, a tradition that Bernays invented. But today, decades later, we're still eating what Bernays told us to eat. So then his third campaign was, now this is where he moves from, something simple to bloodshed, literally, right? So this is where Bernays' work and propaganda got dark. In the early 1950s, the United Fruit Company hired Bernays to protect their business interests in Guatemala. Now, listen to me. The democratically elected government of Jacobo, right, wanted to redistribute unused land to peasant farmers, land that United Fruit owned but wasn't using. Now, Bernays launched a propaganda campaign in American media, portraying Guatemala's progressive government as a dangerous communist threat. Does that not sound familiar? So what he did was Bernays fed stories to major newspapers, arranged for journalists to visit Guatemala on guided tours, and created the narrative that communism was spreading in America's backyard. The campaign worked. The U.S. government, convinced by the propaganda, backed a coup in 1954 that overthrew Guatemala's elected government. Thanks to Bernays. The result was decades of civil war, military dictatorship, and genocide that killed over 200,000 Guatemalans. See, this wasn't selling cigarettes or bacon. This was using propaganda to topple a democracy. Bernays had proven that his techniques could engineer consent not just for products, but for coups, right? And then, here's the other part, the legacy. Why Bernays matters today, right now, right? Bernays died in 1995, but his legacy is more powerful than ever. Every technique he pioneered is now supercharged by technology, right? His appeal to emotion, that's every political ad designed to make you feel afraid or angry. His third-party validation, that's influencer marketing where celebrities and experts sell you products and ideas. And his artificial events, yeah, that's every stage photo op, every viral moment, every manufacturer controversy designed to dominate news cycles. So, his identity marketing, that's every brand trying to sell you a lifestyle, every political movement that makes you feel like you're buying or believing makes you part of something bigger. Yeah. So, when you look at Bernays, his manufactured consensus, right? And when we look at it today, that's nothing but bot networks making fringe ideas seem mainstream, echo chambers making you think everyone agrees with you, right? Bernays wrote the playbook. Modern marketers, politicians, and propagandists just turned up the volume and added algorithms. So the question of ethics remains. And here's the question that we really have to wrestle with. Was Bernays evil, or was he just honest about how society actually works? Right? He would argue that he was a realist, right? But manipulation was inevitable. So it might as well have been done professionally or, in his view, for the beneficial purpose, right? The beneficial purposes of mankind. So that is what Bernays would want you to believe. But here's the problem with that argument. Once you normalize manipulation, you can't control who uses it or for what purposes. Donald Trump. Again, episode 2, I'm going on a deep dive, right? So Bernays used his techniques to sell cigarettes that killed millions. He used them to overthrow democracies. He created the infrastructure that today's demagogues and authoritarians exploit. The tools of propaganda don't care about good intentions. They work the same whether you're selling war bonds or selling fascism, right? So understand this. Being able to recognize Bernays' manipulation today is key. So how do you recognize when you're being manipulated using Bernays' techniques, right? Again, episodes 2 through 6, you need to follow it. But here's the thing. Here's how you recognize. You need to ask these questions. Am I being made to feel like something am I being made to feel something strong? Am I feeling fear? Am I feeling anger? Am I feeling pride? Am I feeling a sense of belonging? That's emotional manipulation bypassing rational thought. Trump's base, they don't exist in rational thought. Everything that they work off of is emotion. So when you look at it, it is whether it's an expert celebrity telling you what to think or an influencer, right? That's third-party validation designed to manufacture authority. Even our beloved politicians, when they go out on the campaign trail, it's propaganda, right? And then you have to ask yourself, when they're doing this, does this feel like a spontaneous movement or is it a trend, right? Is it staged or is it artificially amplified, right? Am I being told that this product or this idea candidate represents who I am? That's identity marketing making you feel confused, right? With consumption and self-expression, right? So, does it seem like everyone believes this? No, not everyone. But that's why media literacy is so important, right? That when you can look at things and tell whether or not consensus are manufactured, you're on the road to understanding how the media works. And once you start asking these questions, you'll see Bernays' fingerprints everywhere, on every ad, every viral moment, every political message, every social media campaign, right? So here's the thing, the power of awareness is huge. It cannot be overstated, right? Bernays understood something profound, right? That invisible influence is the most powerful influence. The best propaganda doesn't feel like propaganda. It feels like your own thoughts, your own choices, your own beliefs. But here's the thing about invisible government. Once you can see it, it starts to lose power. We're seeing that with Trump. Again, episode 2, you want to follow that, I'm telling you, right? Because once you understand the techniques, you can choose to resist them, right? So that's what this series is all about, right? We're learning to see the invisible. We're learning to recognize when we're being manipulated, right? We're building the mental defenses that Bernays never wanted us to have. Remember, he wanted people to be manipulated, right? So in our next episode, all right, we're going to fast forward to present day, all right? We're going to see how Donald Trump took Bernays' playbook and perfected it for the digital age, right? We're going behind the curtain of Trump's media manipulation machine, and you're going to be shocked by how directly he is following Bernays' blueprint. Until then, all right, do me a favor, stay curious, stay critical, and remember, the first step to resisting manipulation is recognizing that it exists, okay? So again, this has been episode 1. I'm your host, David J. And look, I look forward to seeing you in episode 2. All right, y'all be safe.